Of every stand in the wonderful hellscape we know and love as YBA, Cream, I think, has to be the stand that I see the least. And I think I can understand why. It has an extremely limited moveset of only 3 unique abilities, each of which can be easily avoided, and the stand itself isn't exactly the most common nor the most rare in terms of chance. It is simply a stand that to many just exists, maybe for the sake of variety. However, after doing a lot of talking, researching, and of course testing, I am of the opinion that Cream is potentially the most overlooked stand in the game. Today I will be showing you various techniques, strategies, and counterplay to help your opponents learn that, when you stare into the void
stares back.
Cream can be obtained using a stand arrow at a 4% chance. At the time of recording, it currently has no further evolutions or alternative forms, neither does it have any shiny forms or stand skins. As previously mentioned, Cream only has 3 moves, and to my knowledge, all of these moves have the exact same cooldown of 10 seconds. This means that if you play your cards right, you can have a response to most scenarios that enemies can throw you in. Let's jump into the moves now so I can hurry and explain the strategies that we have in store. The first move is Dimension Dip. This move will bring you and only you into a dark dimension in which you cannot be harmed by enemy attacks, nor can you use any attacks. While it is difficult to see in this dimension, you can however clearly see enemy name tags, which allows for a Cream user to implement a stealthy element into their playstyle. You can reappear from the dark dimension early just by pressing the keybind again. This move can be cancelled from any type of hit as it is medium-ish length wind up, so be careful when using it. The next move is of course Void Surprise. This move, like Dimension Dip, can be cancelled easily by any hit, so it's best to be at somewhat of a range, or at least have the opponent stunned, as even an M1 may cancel this move. Void Surprise will cause you to sink into the ground and reappear underneath your opponent, dealing decent damage and taking away a random limb. Furthermore, it will also stun the opponent for a short amount of time. You may have trouble landing this move as it can very easily be avoided by a jump or even a dash. However, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to land this move very consistently later on. It may also be noted that this move cannot be blocked or parried. The last move is of course Dark Space. Dark Space may also be cancelled just like the others, however it is different to Void Surprise in that it may be blocked. Despite this, it still cannot be parried, meaning that all of Cream's moves are relatively safe. Dark Space will cause you to move rapidly in a zigzag pattern, dealing large amounts of damage to anyone in range that fails to block your attack. Again, many players suffer as this move can easily be avoided, but you clicked on this video for a reason. It's now time to show you why Cream can be an absolute monster. So, Cream has a lot going for it. 3 very useful and safe moves with stupid low cooldowns, so why is it so underused? Well, I think it's mainly because it's so easy to avoid. You can literally just jump away from Void Surprise and simply block Dark Space. Those are its only 2 damaging moves. Given that, the obvious solution to this problem is finding a way to consistently land these very punishing moves. Well, dear viewer, I believe I can present a good number of ways you can improve your Cream gameplay and become the absolute insanity that you deserve to be. I'm going to go through this move by move to make it easier for you to understand. So, I'll start off with Dimension Dip. This is probably one of the most versatile moves I've seen in the game and is definitely an amazing utility to Cream's moveset. I'll start off with some more common basic techniques before delving into more advanced ones. Dimension Dip is, for all purposes, a better dimension hop. It slows you down during it, however the wind up is much faster in comparison to Dimension Hop. What I'm trying to say is, with the faster wind up, you can use Dimension Dip to completely evade various other moves. The ever-balanced time stop is completely avoidable using Dimension Dip, as seen here, however you must still watch out for being ragdolled first, for example by Aura Kicks or Heaven Smite. Following the same logic, however, you may also use it to evade Time Erase combos, Time Acceleration, Reality Marble combos, and more. However, it should be noted that you cannot evade Bites to Dust even if you Dimension Dip early, you will still explode and take damage. Furthermore, Dimension Dip negates any and all damage with the exception of Bites the Dust. This means that if you are hit with a debuff or damage over time, such as Purple Haze Poison, Scary Monsters Bite, Poison and Bleed, Magician's Red Burns, or even poison from the Devil's Palm, you can escape this damage using Dimension Dip. More examples of this include Mr. President's Key Shake, which will not damage you in Dimension Dip. It should be noted, however, that clones and NPCs, for example those spawned by D4C, will follow your position, however they can't attack you. This means that D4C bomb clones explode on impact but does no damage. You can literally use it to walk right through the clones as shown here. I mentioned using Dimension Dip to avoid Time Erase earlier, but you may also use it to avoid another Cream's Dimension Dip. I would, however, recommend using it a few seconds after that they do, so that they aren't just able to wait you out. It should also be noted that Gold Experience Requiem can use Return to Zero on Dimension Dip and put you in a cutscene, so I instead recommend using a quick Dimension Dip to bait out RTZ. Now this next tech for Dimension Dip is slightly more advanced, as it requires you to know when to use it properly so that you don't waste your cooldowns, but I think it has a niche use that many may find useful. When you go into Dimension Dip, you are slowed down to a slightly reduced walking speed. However, if you spam the Dimension Dip key, you will go in and out at the same time, like this. And for some reason, you will gain speed equal to the reduced speed you would have in the dimension. You essentially get your running speed plus your Dimension Dip speed. Now, this only lasts for the amount of time that Dimension Dip lasts for, which I think is between 5 to 8 seconds, but this is essentially a quick speed buff with only a 10-second cooldown. Speed is key in this game, and if you can catch up to your opponent and throw out some tricks, you will do far better with Cream than you might have thought. Just make sure to use it wisely, however, as I'd recommend saving the Dimension Dip cooldown when against certain stands, like Star Platinum the World, who could stop time at any point. So now that we've talked about how good Cream's utility in Dimension Dip can be, I'd now like to talk about consistently landing the attacking moves, starting with Void Surprise. I do want to quickly teach you what Void Surprise isn't, and that is a combo escaper. Void Surprise is cancelable at the start of the move, meaning it will not get you out of any combos, especially at a close range. Even an M1 can cancel it, so you must be mindful. That's not to say, however, you can't use it to punish your opponent's N-lag when they miss moves such as Zoom Punch or Jawbreaker. With that out of the way, onto the attacking aspect of Void Surprise. It is not so uncommon knowledge that Void Surprise may damage your opponent both while you are sinking into the ground and while you are rising back up, although it still can only hit once. This means that you can time Void Surprise on ragdolled opponents. If you use Void Surprise on their ragdoll, the idea is that since it is unblockable, you either hit them going down if they don't dash, or alternatively if they do dash, you might miss the hit going down, but then they can't dash out of the hit going up. And once you've landed Void Surprise, you can of course begin your high damage combos. So that's the method I use to consistently land Void Surprise. Do keep in mind though that it is of course a relatively safe move to throw out, as even if it misses it has very little end lag. The best spec to do this, in my opinion, is Boxing, just for the sheer tankiness of it, as well as the golden ragdoll and combo set in Jawbreaker and Eye Gouge. However, Vampirism also works well, as Freezing guarantees that you can land the entire combo. Vampiric Cream will however suffer from the likes of Star Platinum the World Hamon, so I personally stick to Boxing. If you choose Boxing, I would advise however that you don't upgrade Jawbreaker's knockback, as you'd want them to be ragdolled as close to you as possible so that it is easier for you to time Void Surprise. Do however max out the skill cooldowns and Eye Gouge stun. Okay, so we know how to evade with Dimension Dip, and we know how to get them into a stun and remove a limb with Void Surprise. Therefore, the last move I'd like to show text for before we get into some combos is of course Dark Space. Dark Space is our heavy hitter damage move, which can be blocked, however with this technique it makes it much harder to avoid. Dark Space always goes in a zigzag pattern, as previously mentioned. However, the direction this move goes in is always right, then left, then right, then left. It always travels to the right first. Essentially, the technique is that if your opponent is in front of you, you can flick your camera just about under 90-ish degrees to your left, and you will travel to their position much faster. I'll show a little diagram on screen to help you understand it, but essentially, at certain distances, an opponent that would have to block before the second zigzag hits them, instead would need to block nearly instantly before the first zigzag hits them. This is also useful for punishing certain abilities. For example, if someone uses a move that puts them in an end lag like a barrage or emerald splash, you can simply dash roughly to the left of them and use dark space to immediately travel to the right. And this is no light move to get hit by. Dark space hits like a truck for between 40 to 50 damage and further removes a limb on top of it. So that concludes each of the techs I thought to show you. Now I can talk about some combos. I personally like to try and lock them into a stun using Boxing Barrage or just Cream M1s. You can then immediately use Jawbreaker, and regardless of the outcome, you can begin your combos. Whether they are ragdolled or guard broken, you can use Void Surprise right into Eye Gouge, like this, for an easy stun. I have personally had success in using Dark Space right after this, however this can be blocked, so an alternative and better combo is to do 2 M1s after the Eye Gouge and then use Jawbreaker again, as it should be off cooldown given the right upgrades. You can then use Dark Space whether or not they are guard broken again, as it is a safe move and very punishing for them if they fail to block as soon as they get up. If you're having trouble getting close to start the combo, try and use the speed boost tech with Dimension Dip to get a bit closer. Another option is to dash into your opponent and use Void Surprise or Dark Space. This is probably only viable on new players, as it can be so easily cancelled at that range. And that's pretty much it. Once you've erased just one leg, Cream gets massively buffed as Void Surprise immediately becomes much harder to escape. Couple that with some nearly guaranteed combos, a speed boost tech, and the ability to completely avoid a lot of damaging moves in the game, and you have yourself an extremely underused stand which has the potential to easily defeat the high tier stands given the right user. I won't say that Cream is super meta, of course not, but I believe that it can hold its own far better than people give it credit for based on these techs. On screen now are the various skill trees of the build I recommend for Cream boxing. Feel free to edit them as you wish, but this is the one that I personally found the most success with. Just pause and unpause as you need them, however it's a pretty basic build. Cream is very cheap to max and the upgrades are, in my opinion, worth it. And that unfortunately brings us to the end of the guide. I hope you enjoyed a more in-depth guide this time on what I consider to be a very underrated stand, and I'll have more coming soon. With that, thank you very much for watching. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing so that I'd know that you'd like to see more. If you have a favourite stand, underrated or not, that you'd like for me to research and maybe make a video on, let me know in the comments below. Big thanks as well to Tank Flatter for helping me out with the intro animation, it's amazing as always, and also thank you to the YBA team for allowing YouTubers to use their game models in animations. It is a very big help and I really appreciate it. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you all next time.